everyone! So this video is up a lot later than I wanted it to be. I planned to film this a couple weeks back, but started off June by being sick, so I could barely talk and no video was going to happen then. And of course, as soon as I got better, I broke my phone. So June's off to a great start. But anyway, this is my May wrap-up, so this is all the books that I managed to read in the month of May. Now I'm going to run through them quite quickly because I honestly managed to read quite a lot, more than I thought I would. So I'm probably going to be running through them a lot faster than I would normally like to, but let's get straight to the list. The first book I managed to finish in the month of May was The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. And I know this book was super hyped, everyone was really into it, but I ended up giving it only 3 stars, and I think most of those stars were because of the potential of the book. I really didn't like it. I didn't think any of the characters are really compelling or interesting, and I didn't like how the story dragged on and on and on. And when it finally got to the climax that I'd been waiting for 700 something pages, it lasted 1 chapter and under 20 pages. It was just like, I've been waiting for this final battle scene between good and evil for so long, and then it's just over like nothing. So the book felt really anticlimactic to me. The characters weren't compelling at all. It's just really unfortunate because the book had so many great elements to it. It had a queendom, it had dragons, it had a female-female romance. Like, it had so many really cool things going for it, and I had such high expectations going into it that I think I ended up being pretty disappointed in the end. So that was an unfortunate read for me this month. I wish I liked the book, I just didn't. The next book I managed to read was The Cruel Prince, which I went into in my last video, so I won't really go into it that much. Just want to say, overall, I did enjoy the book. Was it a masterpiece? No, but was it fun to read? Yeah, it was a fun book. I enjoyed it. Of course, upon finishing The Cruel Prince, I immediately had to jump on and read The Wicked King, which I loved a lot more than The Cruel Prince. I thought the story really started to pick up momentum in the second book, and the characters were a lot more fleshed out and a lot more interesting in this one. So The Cruel Prince was kind of like mediocre in comparison, and The Wicked King was just like hitting all the beats for me. The story was going so much faster, there were so many crazy things happening that you just had to keep turning the page to see what was going to happen next. And the romance got a little steamy. It was fun, it was good, I enjoyed it. I loved seeing more interactions between Jude and Cardan, and the ending. I might have thrown my Kindle because I was so pissed. So pissed, but so very excited to see what's going to happen in the last book because shit's going down and I'm really ready for it. The next book I read was actually a reread. I read The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, which was always one of my favorite books growing up. I read it, I believe, first maybe in the 9th grade, but I honestly haven't read it since high school. So I wanted to kind of revisit it and see why I liked the book so much, and still like the book, still good. The only thing I would say that's maybe a bit more lucid to me now that I'm older and reading it is how much I don't enjoy the character of Dorian Gray and how much the character of Lord Henry is who I'm really there for. I know he's kind of supposed to be like the antagonist in a way, like he's, you know, the one that makes Dorian fall down this rabbit hole of becoming this hedonistic evil person, but Lord Henry's got some sound advice. Like, if you take it with a little bit of heed, he's got some good shit to say, and I think Dorian could have done well with it if he'd gone about it the right way. But either way, it's a super enjoyable read, super quotable. It's one of those books where every other page I'm like highlighting something, going like, yeah, that's some good shit right there. We need to remember that. So it's an overall really enjoyable read to me. The only thing I will say is there's this one chapter, it's chapter 11. I know it's chapter 11 because I will never forget it. Wow, is that the worst chapter in a book I've ever read in my life. It was just like lists after lists after lists of like different hobbies that Dorian was doing. And it drove me crazy. It took me forever to get through that one chapter because I was like, oh my god, he's still talking about rocks. But aside from that, a great read. Super fun, super creepy, and the best classic. The next book I read was Defy the Stars by Claudia Gray. And the reason I actually read this was because Read with Cindy recommended it, and I really, really, really love Read with Cindy's channel. I think she's an amazing booktuber and someone that everyone should go subscribe to, so go do that now. I read it because of her recommendation, and I hated it. I felt so bad with how much I hated the book, but I really, honest to God, hated it. I gave it 2 stars, and the only reason I even gave it that 1 extra star, like 1 push away from just being 1 star, was because the beginning was so good and so promising. Like, I went into the book and was reading the first few chapters and was like, yeah, this is some good shit. We are ready. I loved Abel's character. I thought he was super interesting. I liked his passive aggressiveness that he had going on with the female main character, whose name I can't even remember. But anyway, I enjoyed their chemistry. I thought they were really interesting together. But the more I read, the less I liked the characters. As Abel slowly fell in love with our lead girl, he just kind of lost any interesting part of his personality. And the lead girl, I gotta look up what her name is. What is her name? Noemi. Her name is Noemi. And Noemi's character just never grew for me. I didn't really understand what was so interesting or amazing about her, because everything she was able to do in the book was always because of Abel. Abel did everything, and the few things she did do, he was always just like, oh, what a human way of thinking. And I'm just sitting there like, yeah, I knew she was gonna fucking do that, because of course that's what you would do in that situation. So her amazingness was only amazing to Abel and not really to me as a reader. So I didn't really get her. And then when they finally separate at one point in the book, Abel gets kidnapped essentially and Noemi's by herself, I was just like, yes, she's gonna show what an amazing person she is and all of her skills. And then suddenly there's 2 other people there to help her. And I was just like, this bitch can't do anything, can she? So I really hated Noemi for basically the entire book. And the one other problem I had with it was I was like, wow, Abel and Noemi are really, really lucky. Every time there was a possible conflict going to happen, someone was there to help them out. Didn't matter that they were essentially terrorists. You know what? No, this is the one person on the planet that was gonna help them. They just happened to run into each other. I couldn't get over it. I was like, why are they so lucky? Why is nothing bad happening to them in this whole story? It just made it so uninteresting to me. But anyway, I'm gonna stop ranting about how much I hate this book, but I feel bad about how much I disliked it, but I really, really did. I will not be reading the next book because I do not care at all. All the characters could die and I would be like, cool. So, sorry Read with Cindy, sorry Claudia Gray, sorry Defy the Stars. Not my shtick, but thanks for trying. The next book I read was another classic. It was Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. And I kind of went into this not knowing anything about the book. I obviously read Pride and Prejudice before. It's one of my favorite books in the entire world. I love Pride and Prejudice. So I kind of went in like, yeah, it's Jane Austen. I will like it. It's fine. And a friend of mine a long time ago had recommended the movie to me. So I thought, well, if my friend likes it, maybe I'll like it too, even though the movie and book are apparently completely different. But when I started to read it, I found out that apparently Mansfield Park is Jane Austen's most controversial book. Like, it's a book that a lot of people don't like. And while I was reading it, I understood why. Her main character is not like her main character in other Jane Austen books, like Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice. Those are like really strong and vocal female characters, and the main character in Mansfield Park is not that. But I wasn't super offended by it or hated it for any reason. I thought her main character, whose name again I can't remember, I thought her reactions were justified based on the environment she grew up in and what she was used to and what was expected of her. I thought she was actually quite a very noble character. So I enjoyed her. I thought she was fine. I didn't have any problems with her. And I liked the book overall. I gave it 3 stars just because it's not a book I would read again. It wasn't that enjoyable, but overall the story was fine. I didn't have any problems with the writing or problems with the characters. It was okay. It was alright, so 3 stars. The next book I read was Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli, I believe. I wanted to read this book because I actually hadn't seen the movie Love, Simon yet, and I really, really, really wanted to watch it. So I was like, okay, let's read the book first, just to compare. And I gave it 1 star. This is the only book this month that I gave 1 star to, but I hated this book so much. Reading it was such a pain for me. Like, just every page was painful. And as a disclaimer, I went into this book already aware that, generally speaking, I do not like contemporary. I'm just not a fan of it because when I'm reading books, I read it for escapism purposes. So when I read contemporaries, especially contemporaries I can relate to, it almost offends me because I'm just like, this is not the experience I wanted. I did not want to see any part of my life in a book, which I know a lot of people enjoy and like, but again, because I read mostly for escapism and wanting to go to another world, I hate seeing things I recognize. So reading Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda was just really painful for me overall. I hated everything about it. Let's start with a list. The first thing I hated was the characters. Simon was okay. He was fine. Did he act like, a gay high school kid? Probably not. He seemed to act more like a 30-something-year-old woman trying to write a gay high school kid, but let's, put that aside. It's fine, whatever. But essentially all the characters were completely unlikable. The only character I'd say I didn't not like was Nick, and he was barely there, so that's probably the only reason I liked him. I did like the character of Abby for a long time. She was probably my favorite character in the book, but there is something she does near the end of the book where I just sat there like, really? You're gonna be that bitch? Because that goes against all your character development for the last 3/4 of the book. But sure, fine, okay. So I got really mad about that. Leah's character is horrible. I hated her from the get-go. I cannot believe she has a whole other book written about her because I don't know why anyone would want to read about what such a horrible human being as Leah is. She's a horrible friend. She's so mean to Simon, so mean to Nick, so mean to Abby the whole time. And then the ending they give her tries to pass it off as her being quirky. It's just part of her personality. Like, she would look at all this other cool stuff she was doing. I'm just like, I don't care. She was still a bitch. I don't care what, like, anything. I hated her. She was so horrible. I also hated all of the pop culture references throughout the book. Like, at first it was funny. It was like, oh, cute, he's listening to Tegan and Sarah. That's adorable. I love Tegan and Sarah. But then it was every other page. Every other page, there's a reference to some sort of music artist or an anime or a TV show or something. And I'm just sitting there like, we get it, Becky Albertalli, you like a lot of fandom things. That's cool, but I don't care. I literally do not care. So it just wasn't my cup of tea. My takeaway from the book is that if you are between the ages of, say, 10 and 15, you'll probably love this book. It'll probably be an amazing book and a great way to experience reading or seeing a story about a young gay person coming out. I think it can be a really valuable story for young people. But as someone who's, you know, getting up in their years, reaching their 30s, this book's pretty useless to me. Useless. I just didn't like it. I didn't like the writing style. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like essentially anything. But I'm not the intended target audience of this book, so that's okay. But then you can argue things like Harry Potter isn't meant for me, or Percy Jackson, but those are books that I like, but this one I didn't. And if you like it, good for you. Not mine. I don't, pass. The next book I read was another reread, but one that I completely forgot about, so I needed to go back and read it, and it was Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews. This book, man. I read this book in high school. I remember in middle school and early high school, I was obsessed with the movie, like the Lifetime movie of Flowers in the Attic. Mwah. Ah, such a good movie. It's a horrible movie. But to middle school, high school me, it was a great movie, and I loved everything about it. So I really wanted to go back and read it and actually finish the series, because I've never read the books after the first book, Flowers in the Attic, so I wanted to go back and try to reread it all. I really like the book. Is it a perfect book? No, not really. But overall, I had a great time. I didn't really find myself ever wanting to put it down, because I liked the flow of the story a lot. I liked the point of view of Kathy, the main character. I think the way she spoke was really interesting and was a good viewpoint to go off of from, or like to see the situation that these kids were in. So I really enjoyed that overall, and I really forgot how kind of creepy the book was. Like, obviously the story sounds creepy when you talk about it, 5 kids being locked in an attic to die by their own mother. Yeah, like, it sounds pretty creepy, but reading it again, I was like, this is really dark. Like, the one scene that really got me reading it this time that I didn't remember was when the grandmother is starving them, and like starving them I think for 2 weeks or something, and the older brother Chris actually like slashes his wrist and feeds his blood to the younger twins so that they don't die. Like, I was sitting there like, oh, ooh, okay, that's dark. But it was fun. I enjoyed the reading overall. My only critique is, wow, I did not remember how poorly written that rape scene was. Yeah, it could be well written. This one was not. It was just kind of embarrassing. And it lasted only maybe a page and a half, but it was a page and a half of embarrassment that I could have gone without. So that was that. I don't know. Obviously, if you know anything about Flowers in the Attic, you know there's incest. I went into that knowing it. I don't mind reading incest. I think it can be an interesting topic to approach in fiction, and Flowers in the Attic is a really good example of that. But Chris and Kathy's relationship is definitely it's something. It's interesting. Chris is a little bit crazy, but it's fine, because at the end of the day, it's an enjoyable read. I liked reading about his character, but just reading. The next book I read was one I was super excited to read, and it was Every Heart a Doorway by, is it pronounced Shannon? I'm gonna say it Shannon, but don't quote me. Shannon McGuire. This book was awesome. I loved this book. I gave it 4 stars. It was just everything I wanted, honestly. I loved the writing style of this book. It was just magical to read. I can tell that this story really does draw from like Alice in Wonderland kind of, I guess, writing style. And it's beautiful. There were so many sentences where I was just like, that's so nice. That sounds so cool. That sounds so magical. Like, just, it's a beautiful, beautiful writing style. Like, I remember specifically, there's one scene where the lead character, Nancy, is talking about why her hair is black and white, because other kids are being like, oh, why'd you dye your hair like that? And she tells them, no, I didn't dye it. This was because I danced with the King of the Dead or something, and he liked my hair, and he ran his fingers through it, and all the hair around his fingers turned white with envy because of the hair. They weren't like the hair that he touched. And I was just like, that's so cool. Like, it just had so many moments like that where I was just like, this is such an interesting and magical land. So I just super, super enjoyed that. And also, shout out, loved the fact that the main character was Ace. Thank you. Very cool. Really appreciative. I did think they were a little heavy-handed with how they presented her asexualness, but I understand why that's necessary, because there is basically zero, almost, ace representation in media, so having like really defined terms in the book is kind of essential and necessary. But it did come off as heavy-handed to me just because I'm obviously already aware of those kind of issues and that kind of sexuality. So I prefer a more subtle approach, but I understand why they were more heavy-handed in telling us about her sexuality. I did also feel that the ending was a little bit rushed, more than I wanted it to be. It is a short book, and I felt it could have used an extra 50 pages just to kind of, wrap everything up, but it didn't really do that. But it's okay. Overall, it was a super enjoyable book. I will definitely be reading the rest of the Wayward Children series from Shannon McGuire. I really, really enjoy it, and definitely recommend. The last book I managed to read in May is one I don't have a whole lot to say about, and it was 12 Years a Slave by Solomon Northup, which is an autobiography about, obviously, a free black man who was enslaved against his will and against his right. So I don't really know how much I can say about it, because I feel like I can't judge a biography like this. Like, I can't really judge the writing style and everything, because I mean, he's telling of like true events. I think he did a very good job of retelling those events. I'm sure there were definitely things that were embellished, as most autobiographies are, but I enjoyed it overall. My one critique, I would say, is there were quite a few chapters where he went super in depth explaining like very technical aspects of plantation life, like telling me how, I don't even know, like how they would pick cotton, or like just how like the sugarcane machines, how they would grind it down and stuff, like, I don't know, like stuff that I did not understand, and was just sitting there like, when are we gonna go back to the story? So that was the only thing. I did enjoy the story overall. It was very interesting to learn about the history. I had obviously seen the movie before, and I really liked the movie, but it was nice to read it from start to finish and kind of see in detail everything that happened to Solomon. So it was a great read overall. I think it was a really important and insightful read for me. And overall, okay, 3 stars. Why not? So that's it for my May wrap up. Those are all the books I managed to read in May. How many was that actually? 10. I read 10 books in May. Small clap for myself, because I'm definitely not going to be able to do that in June. But we're trying. We're trying. It's not working, but we're trying. So thank you all for joining me for my May wrap up. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I will see you next time.